Hello, everybody. Dusty Sage from MiceChat.com here at the front gate of Disneyland in California. And Disneyland opens this coming Friday on April 30th, and we couldn't be more excited. But there's going to be a few days of cast member previews just before that, and we thought that you might have some questions about what the best practices are for visiting Disneyland once it opens, because things will not be exactly as you remember them. So the old days of showing up with your ticket and going right on into the park are over for now. And we're going to go over some of the best tips for making a reservation, getting your tickets, where to park, what time the parks will open, what's going to be changed in the park, how you're going to get food, what services will not be available, etc. There's a lot of information for us to go over. I am joined today by one of our Mice Chat staff. Matt Baumgartner is with us. And Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, and how are you?
I am so glad to be back at Disneyland and almost back in the park. I'm actually going to turn this around so people don't need to look at my ugly mug. Hold on one second here. I just have to figure that out. I've ruined it. Matt, can you see? There I am. I can't figure out how to turn this around, but I know I can. I know there's a way. There must be. Meanwhile, I am joined here. Behind me is one of our Mice Chat staffers, our cameraman, um, and that is Mike. He does such incredible work for us. There it is. We found it there. Sorry, folks. It's the first time we're using this new software, so it just takes a second for me to figure out what to do. It's all good. There we go. So we're here at the front gate of Disneyland. You can see there, Mickey Floral over there, and I'm going to walk you around in just a second. But before we get started, because I don't want to hold him up too much longer, I ran into Mike. He was here at the front gate, and Mike was taking pictures of the Mickey Floral, but what he was really looking at is you can look just through the entrance tunnels there of Disneyland, and the horse-drawn carriages were going by. You see a cast member walking by there. You saw an omnibus. What else did you see walking by?
I saw the omnibus, I saw the fire truck, and I saw the Disneyland Railroad, the trains coming by, and everybody looked real happy. Everybody was waving as they were driving by.
So it's like in there, the world is normal, but they're keeping us out.
Right.
So it's very exciting. And you'll be here at the park with us on opening day on April 30th.
Yes.
And you're super excited, I'm guessing.
Super excited.
You even got a hotel room at the Anaheim Hotel, and you're all ready to just walk in across Harbor Boulevard and come right in the easy way.
The easy way.
The easy way. And I'm going to talk about that on this broadcast as well, because it's not all going to be easy, and parking might actually be a little bit difficult. I'm going to wander, Mike. It was so good to see you, and hopefully I run into you again before I leave today.
Already.
You see here on the ground that they have social distancing markers set up at all of the front gate booths, because you'll have to keep about that much distance between you and the party in front and behind you before you enter on opening day. I'm just walking to a more interesting spot. We can see that Mickey Floral a little bit better. And Matt, so the first thing that guests are going to have to do before they can come to Disneyland is they need to buy a ticket, right?
They do, and the queue system is not in use right now because there's not a whole lot of demand. So the process is pretty easy. You just go to Disneyland.com, and there's an option to purchase one-day tickets or park hoppers.
Yeah, park hoppers are expensive, but I think that you'll want that flexibility, particularly if you're California Adventure where there's not a lot open, and you might just want to have the ability to hop. And hopping is going to work a little differently than it did in the past, because you're not going to be able to park hop in the morning. You won't be able to hop until 1. But your very best ticket value is probably those multi-day tickets. The more days you add, the cheaper and cheaper it gets per day. So if you buy a 3-day ticket or a 5-day ticket, they're particularly good value. But you only have 13 days to use all the days in your ticket once you've used the first day. So that's the first step. You get your ticket. So find a ticket that's right for you. There are no annual passports available right now. and there are no promotional tickets readily available, like SoCal passes and things like that they've had in the past at this time of year. So really, it's just 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, 5 day ticket, and that's just the first step, right, Matt? Because then you have to schedule a visit to the park, and that's what's new. You've always been able to buy tickets, but you never had to schedule your visit in advance, and that's where I think some folks are going to run into trouble. We've already heard some people saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go on the 30th," and then they find out that you need a reservation to go on the 30th, even though you have a ticket that's valid. And if you don't have that reservation, they won't let you in. Isn't that right, Matt?
Yeah, I think that could be a problem, unfortunately. They do appear to be opening availability on a rolling basis. For example, just yesterday they had availability again on the 30th for park hoppers, which they had not had since shortly after they went available to the public on the 15th. So there's a chance that reservations will be available again on the 30th, but I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah, I know you keep posting in the Mice Chat group on Facebook, letting people know that even though that the opening day, the 30th, was completely booked solid, that periodically additional spaces pop up, particularly for the park hopper ticket. So do you recommend that people check every day, or how should they, if they
If they
didn't get a reservation, how couldn't they maybe score one?
I would check, depending on how often you're in front of a computer, I would check every hour. If you really want to go on a certain date, I think it would definitely be worth your time to check every hour or every other hour to see what's available. For example, they released a lot of reservations yesterday. Uh, Up until yesterday afternoon, there were only 3 days available in May for Disneyland to be a starting park for the 1 day tickets. Yet in the afternoon yesterday, there were about 15 days that magically appeared.
Huh.
So I would keep checking.
I wonder if they just had really low capacity limits set initially, and they're slowly adding more based on, people canceling reservations or possibly having more staff members, join that they think they can handle a little more capacity. We do think that the park will be at, they're allowed to be at 25% capacity when they reopen, but we don't think they're going to be at 25% capacity. We think they're setting the limit artificially low at first so that they can be prepared for guests and have a smooth experience, and then slowly ramp up to the 25% that they're allowed. They will eventually be able to bump that up to 35% in the yellow tier. I don't want to get too much into the weeds of the tier system here in California, but we're very close to reaching yellow tier, and it could happen at any time, actually. And then they'll be able to add even more people into the park. I don't really want to see that happen right away, because even though they are allowed to have more people in the park, they won't be allowed to add more capacity to the attractions. It's a weird, it's a weird system. So they would just have more people and the lines would get longer. So I think we're better off for them to stay at 25 at first, and they probably will. And then they'll slowly ramp up as they did at Disney World. Disney World has been open now for a long time. They reopened in July of last year. I did go out for the opening, and there's a lot of things that we learned. And I've been told that Disneyland is following the Disney World model pretty closely on how they are going to handle the reopening of the parks. So for sure, masks and social distancing and all that stuff. But there's a lot more to it. And we'll talk a little bit about how that they are handling the queuing on attractions, and getting food is going to be a little bit of a difficult process. And by the way, folks, what you were seeing on your camera, I'm live at the resort right now, and I figured it'd be more fun than just watching an old guy talk on a screen for me to be walking through downtown Disney. You get a little dose of Disney while you're hearing the news about the park reopening. And please feel free to leave us comments. Matt will keep an eye there on the comments and let me know if there's any questions that we should answer. So I really appreciate it. We're so glad to see so many of you with us right now. It's awesome. I'm surprised there are a lot of people here. It's Saturday, and recently on Saturdays, downtown Disney has just been packed. And it's busy today. There's a lot of people, but not so many that there's a long line here at World of Disney. In fact, it's kind of a short line. Normally it would stretch all the way along the whole building, and it's not right now. So Matt, first things first, they've got their reservation. It's their day to go. They have to have two things to even park. You need to have your ticket and you need your reservation. Because what I'm hearing is they will ask for that at the parking structure, and the main parking structure is going to be Mickey and Friends. So Mickey and Friends and Pixar Pals will be the primary place for folks to park. They're going to park every other space, and that's going to take time. So it's going to take a lot of extra work by the staff. And they also don't want guests to be, clogging up, like lots of people all getting out of their cars at the same time. So in order to maintain social distancing, they may actually slow down how quickly you can even enter the parking structure. If you see a really long line out of the structure, that's not a good sign. It could mean a long wait. And Matt, did you come to Touch of Disney?
I did. I was there on opening day, and I did
There was
not
a
use the
crazy,
parking structure.
yeah, crazy parking situation. Like it was taking people an hour or more. So, what would you suggest? Like, they just come super early, or should they just come a little late? What do you think?
Well, I think from what I've heard, the parking structure might be opening a little bit early, so I think that could be an option, even though they're going to have to really bring their patience. I think if you want to completely avoid that hassle, considering you're going to have to pay anyway, is I would go to the Anaheim Hotel and enter on Harbor. The Anaheim Hotel is just a very short walk. It's less money and fewer people by far.
I'm really glad you brought that up. Actually, that's where I parked today. Even Anaheim Hotel has a special MiceChat.com rate, and anybody that's listening to this qualifies. So all you need to do is go to the hotel, you go to the front desk and say, I'd like that Mice Chat parking special. Now, through the end of April, it's $10 all day long every day. But because the parks are reopening and the hotel needs more parking spaces and more people are going to be at the parks for a whole day instead of right now, they're just going to downtown Disney for a few hours. They're going to change the parking offer for Mice Chat for next month through July. It's a long period of time. And it's going to be, we get this right, it's going to be $15 for all day during the week and $20 all day on the weekends, which is still a great deal because it'll be $25 to park the structure. And Matt, there is no parking lot tram right now. So if
Right,
you,
so you're going to have to walk anyway.
yeah, well, the Anaheim Hotel is not nearly as far away as the parking structure. So if you have trouble walking long distances, parking structure will be a little difficult for you. But there is a tip here. If you need a stroller or an ECB or a wheelchair, you can rent those at the parking structure, at the Mickey and Friends structure. So they'll have them there approximately where they do the temperature check and all of that stuff. So it is available for those who need it. They don't make you walk all the way to the Esplanade and buy it there. So they've thought about that. Um, I do think parking is going to end up being an issue for people. And there's not unlimited parking at the Anaheim Hotel, but I do know that during just Disney operation and a touch of Disney operation, a lot of people were using that Mice Chat offer over there at the Anaheim Hotel. And they really appreciate it. They're kind of a small business. We have a couple of hotels, and they would not have survived without your help and support parking there. Um, and even now, with the park in such limited capacity and only to California residents, we'll get more on that here. They have not had hardly any hotel bookings for the coming weeks and months because people from out of state are usually the ones that book hotel rooms. So if you're booking parking, you're helping them out, and we appreciate that. So, what is the deal on out of state visitors? If you've been following my chat, you've heard about the blueprint for reopening. And the blueprint for reopening in California states that theme parks can only sell tickets to in state residents, so only Californian residents. But very quietly last week, they filed a travel addendum that they just put on the website and they never talked to anybody about. And that allows people from out of state to come visit if they've been vaccinated. But the rule still is theme parks shouldn't sell tickets to out of state visitors unless they've been vaccinated. And it doesn't even really specifically state that on the rule. You have to click through and find this addendum. But it does in fact apply to theme parks. We were able to confirm that, and our friends at the LA Times and San Diego Union Tribune were able to get a hold of the state and get a confirmation that yes, with vaccination, theme parks could sell tickets to guests from out of state if they so choose. Disneyland is not doing that, not yet. SeaWorld is. So SeaWorld is already selling tickets to everybody that wants to go. And Disneyland is not commenting yet, other than to say it's business as usual. We do think they will eventually get there. It may not happen until their park capacity increases a little bit. They may be waiting for June. The state is supposed to lift more restrictions on June 15th. And I know that was always in Disney's plan, that they were thinking that was about the time they were going to be able to have out-of-state visitors. So we will hear more very soon, I'm sure, from Disney on if they're going to wait or if they're just going to go ahead and start selling those tickets for vaccinated folks. But it's getting close. And as you can see, most guests are pretty good about safety. They're wearing their masks and they're trying to keep their distance. And most people over the age of 65 in California, almost 100% have been vaccinated. So it's starting to feel a little bit normal. I just saw something there. A guy over there had his mask off, and security stopped him and told him to put his mask back on. And that's the way it should be. You should come, you should get your vaccination when you get your chance, and be as safe as you can, and then people can go back to the theme parks. That's my thought on it, Matt. And I'm not overly worried. I've been vaccinated, and everyone in my house is vaccinated. I know most of the people on our team have been vaccinated, including you. Do you feel safe going back to the parks?
Very much. I have no issues at all.
And early on, I was of course worried about everything all the time, and but I still had to travel to Orlando as part of our business. We can't do our business and write about theme parks if we're not covering what's going on in the theme parks. And I had an opportunity to go cover the opening of Universal out there, and then to cover the opening of Disneyland. And I talked about on the live videos that I did that, it felt a little weird to me. I felt, like I was trying to keep extra distance from everybody. I hated flying. And I just feel so much more relief now that I've been vaccinated. So I'm looking forward to Disneyland's opening this week, because I also don't have a lot of concern. I'm standing right here in front of the new Star Wars store, and I want to stop and talk about it and kind of break our conversation for a minute, because there's something about this that I find interesting. So the park has, of course, a huge Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, but there are no longer annual passes. So people cannot go and live in the park anymore. And all of a sudden they moved their Star Wars trading post from a really small space in downtown Disney to this huge space in what used to be Rainforest Cafe. And I think this is kind of a test to see if they build themed experiences in downtown Disney, will the locals show up and visit these themed experiences kind of like they did when they were going to the parks? And I think we're going to see more and more of this type of level of detail and expanse in downtown Disney. But it also plays into Disney's big plans for resort expansion. They have a big, giant plan to expand the resort. They call Disneyland Forward, and it involves building more hotels and restaurants and entertainment and shopping districts, and a potential third park or major expansions to Disneyland and California Adventure. I think it's almost a guarantee that it will actually end up being a third park, because that's how they get an extra day out of people's stay. And I was just talking to some hoteliers in the area, and they're all saying Disney has to build a third park, because if they do, everyone will book an extra day on their vacation so they can see the extra park. If it's just additional attractions in the existing parks, in people's minds, they're not thinking that they need an extra day to see all the new stuff. They're just thinking one day for Disneyland, one day for California Adventure, and then they're out. And sometimes not even the California Adventure. So I do hope, and I think they will end up building it as a third park if they're allowed to by the city and the residents and all of that. There's another piece of the project over closer to the Anaheim Hotel and across from the convention center and what used to be Strawberry Field and is now the Toy Story parking lot. And they're going to turn that into a mixed-use development, or they would like to turn it into a mixed-use development that includes a hotel, possibly a theater, some shops and restaurants, and be like a little mini square downtown Disney with a lake in the middle. That'll be awesome for conventioneers who are at the Anaheim Convention Center because they'll have a neat place to do a Disney shopping and dining experience and not have to walk all the way over to downtown Disney. But it'll also be good for the hotels in the area that are a little further from the park. So that'll be a neat project. But that was always where they were planning to build the third park. And that's why I think it's so interesting that they decided to shoehorn a park in this area right over here where I am now, between the Disneyland Hotel and the Paradise Pier Hotel, instead of building it in that nice square plot of land that's currently the Toy Story lot where they could have a traditional style theme park. And they don't want to build traditional. So in the future, they want everything to be mixed use. They want the hotel to be right there in the theme park, shopping and dining to be right there. They might use special technology, facial recognition technology, so that guests can flow between downtown Disney and the hotel and not be able to ride rides unless they have purchased, a ticket for that. So all sorts of neat new things that we're going to see Disney testing, but a lot of facial recognition from what I understand instead of tickets. So some really cool stuff coming. Matt, I know you have a lot of questions for me about the reopening of the park. So why don't you hit me up for what I may or may not know.
Well, one thing is when you just got past Star Wars Trading Post, there was a view of the parking structure. And
yes,
what I was thinking is how long you had already walked, and yet the parking structure was still far away.
oh yeah,
At the
I'm
end of
still
a
here.
very long day, that is going to be a long walk for a lot of people. I mean, fortunately, there's a lot of young people who wouldn't really think too much of it, but for a large percentage of guests, it's going to be a big deal at the end of the day.
It is, and I think it is also going to be a big issue. I've had to do, that long walk on a number of occasions. There have been times where at New Year's Eve and other times it's just too crowded for them to run trams, so they'll stop the trams and just have everyone walk. And let me tell you, if you've had a super long day at Disneyland and your feet are already hurting you, making that long, boring walk to the parking structure is not a lot of fun. But I think if folks just know what to expect, it will be a lot less difficult for them. So I think just knowing before you leave the park that you need to have rested up a little bit before you make the walk so that you can make it, or that if you're with a parent who has a little trouble getting around, maybe now it is time to rent a wheelchair, for example. So just know before you go, which is why we're doing this video, so that people know what to expect. I think it could be a very negative experience for people when they come back to the parks for the first time and they've had a lot of built up excitement for Disneyland to return, and they just want that magic to be exactly as it was before, and it's not going to be. And I think that's what people need to understand. It's going to be a different experience for a while, but as long as you know what to expect, and before you get there, you've already wrapped your brain around it, then it's not going to be as much of a disappointment when you get there and there's no parade and there's no fireworks and there's no Fantasmic and half of the restaurants are closed and many of the shops are closed and rides that used to fill every seat, like Pirates of the Caribbean, are only seating 4 people. And so even though it's the highest capacity ride in the park on a normal day, it may have a line. So I think if people know to expect those things, then they can temper their expectations and really have a better time. When I went to Disney World, I had no idea what to expect. It was the first Disney park to reopen in the States, and I didn't know if it would be crowded or not crowded or how it would feel. And it was absolutely a ghost town. I could ride anything I wanted, but I learned a few little things. Everybody in the park arrives at opening. And they do that because the park operation was very short. At the time, they were only doing an 8-hour operation. Disneyland's going to do a 10-hour operation. And That's really your advantage, folks. So everybody in the morning is going to arrive all at the same time. Just be prepared for that. Keep your distance, go with the flow, and then don't go where everyone else goes. Everyone's going to go to whatever the hot new thing is. And at Disneyland, that hot new thing is Haunted Mansion. They have new stuff at the Haunted Mansion. And Snow White's Enchanted Wish, which has been kind of reimagined to be less scary and have a happier ending. And I think if you avoid those at first, you'll be able to avoid the longest lines. And by the afternoon, when people start going home, and people will start going home by 2:30 or 3:30, and super fans are going to stay till the park closes, but not everyone that's going on opening day is an influencer or blogger or super fan. And once those people start to leave, the park will be truly empty, and lines for everything will be negligible. The one exception to that is Rise of the Resistance. And I know, Matt, you have a lot of questions about Rise of the Resistance. So should we tackle it?
We should, but let me ask the question about entertainment. You had talked about knowing before you go, and then you were talking about what the experience is going to be like and that it's going to be different. What kind of entertainment are they going to have? Will there be nothing or something? What do you know about that?
Well, it's a very good question. And I'm going to go back to what they did at Disney World because I don't have specifics on this. I know that entertainment has not done very many callbacks. So don't expect anything big. That's the first. There will definitely be characters in the. You won't get in a line to meet them. They won't be signing autographs. So you're not going to see Mickey in Mickey's house, kind of thing. Will not happen. But there will be characters, and they'll be in places where you wouldn't normally see them, and far enough away from you that you can keep a 6 foot distance from them. And in some ways, it's a really nice thing. I really enjoyed that. I think Universal Studios Orlando did the best job of this. Had so many characters out, and they had them doing things, so it felt more organic. So instead of them being in a line, Doc from Back to the Future was on his train. He was out there in the park. He was doing stuff on the train and waving to people and saying things like, "You there? Do you have an extra capacitor?" And so they were more playing with the crowd and kind of being the entertainment. And then you could just take a selfie from any distance you were and have that character in the background. So you had no wait to see them. And Scooby and the gang were out in their mystery machine driving around and then getting out and taking pictures with people. And they had parade floats out, and characters would be on the parade float. So the parade float was just kind of a stage, let's say, for the character to stand on and wave at people and talk. And Disney's doing some similar stuff. And at Disney World, they did take parade floats, just like one float, with a few characters or a dancer or two, and they drive them down the street and play kind of some of the music, parade music, and that's it. It's just like one float. So not quite enough time for people to assemble. They don't give you a time it's going to happen because they don't want people staking out a spot on Main Street, etc. And I think that's a really good way to handle it. So it feels more organic. You just encounter magic, like the old days of Disneyland before everything became so difficult and huge crowds and long waiting for everything. So there's going to be a little bit of entertainment. Don't expect anything big, but it'll happen in magical, organic ways. And I hope that everybody enjoys their experience when they arrive. But for me, it's easier. I don't have any kids, and I don't need to stand in line to see characters. In fact, I never do that. Once in a while, like Halloween or a special, party that they do, they have rare characters out, and if no one's waiting in line, I might get a picture with Clarabelle Cow or one of the villains. But on a normal day, I wouldn't do that. So to me, it's not a big deal. But to people with kids, it could be a bigger deal. So make sure your kid understands. If they remember getting in line to meet the characters, you tell them this is going to be fun. We're going to be looking for characters today. And you might see the chipmunks out in a trail in a garden somewhere, and they might be picking flowers or throwing an acorn around. Or you might see Goofy and Max on a balcony over in Paradise Pier area, fishing from a balcony. So things will be different. Characters will be doing cool things, and maybe you just make it a fun activity for you and the kids to go looking for the characters. shoot pictures of them doing fun things, or your kids looking at the characters rather than just waiting in line to have your 20-second photo with them. And I think that's what's going to happen with entertainment for now. Is there hope for the future? Yes. A lot of theme parks are already doing fireworks, and they're doing fireworks at SeaWorld. It's an outdoor activity. They just put dots on the ground where parties can stand and expect people to keep 6 feet apart. And as long as they've got their masks on and everybody's standing in their spot, it's not a big problem. They've even been able to do some concerts that way outdoors at SeaWorld. So Disney could do it as well. Disney is much more conservative when it comes to safety than SeaWorld is, I will say that. And don't expect Disney to rush back to projection shows and fireworks on the castle, because that packs people onto Main Street. But they might do the old-fashioned fantasy in the sky type fireworks where they shoot them off back behind the park and you can see them from all over the park. You don't have to see them on Main Street, and therefore, just happens for 5 minutes or something and then they're over. So I think we might see something like that happen. So that's my thoughts on entertainment and what to expect more or less based on what we saw at Disney World and a touch of Disney here at California Adventure. So how does that sound to you, Matt?
Sounds great. I'm also not character dependent like a family would be, but it's still nice to see them out and about to bring back a sense of normalcy.
Yeah.
What do you know about Rise of Resistance? Will it be open? Uh, what will the process be to enter the queue? If there is a queue, will it be virtual like it was before?
I have mostly good news for you. So we had a great deal of concern of whether or not they would be able to reopen Rise of the Resistance at all. Because in California, there are a few rules about attraction operation. They are allowing indoor attractions, so that's good news. But those attractions can't be longer than 15 minutes in length. They also cannot queue guests indoors. So think of Indy, think of Rise of the Resistance, think of Millennium Falcon, Smuggler's Run. Those all have extensive indoor queues with story elements. So while you're waiting, you're learning things. But that won't be allowed when the park reopens. So huge changes have had to have been made to Rise of the Resistance in order for it to reopen. I'm just going to kind of get out of the crowd over here so I can chat with you all. And basically they will be queuing outdoors in the queue areas in front of the attractions. And because there are so few guests in the park, it won't be a huge deal, except Rise of the Resistance is so new and huge and amazing that everybody wants to ride it. So they're going to do a virtual queue for Rise of the Resistance. And that's just like the boarding pass they were doing before. In fact, they still call it a boarding pass. But there have been some significant enhancements that I hope they keep even after all the COVID stuff is over. And let me explain. So instead of coming to the park a little before opening and lining up and rushing into the park and then waiting for the park to open to immediately book your Rise of the Resistance pass, you will now be able to book at 7 a.m., hours before the park opens, from your home or from your hotel room or from the road, wherever you are at 7 a.m. And as long as you have a valid ticket and a reservation for the park that day, you will be able to try for a Rise of the Resistance pass at 7 a.m. But there won't be as many tickets available as there were in the past because, one, the ride is operating at very reduced capacity. And in some cases, they're only seating like one person in a vehicle. So if you're a party of one, they can't seat anyone else with you. And they're only seating one party at a time right now. So family of two people in the vehicle, family of four people in the vehicle, etc. So expect very, very, very long waits. So what they're doing, if you have a park hopper ticket and you're at DCA for the day, you won't be able to, if you start your day at DCA, you won't be able to be in Disneyland to make a reservation when the park opens, which is why they did that new plan for 7 a.m. from home. Don't show up early just to get in line, that's the main message. But then at noon, they'll have a second round of opportunities so that those people who are in DCA for the day that are trying to park hop over to Disneyland and they can't do that until 1, have an opportunity to ride Rise of the Resistance in the afternoon. This is the first time they've done that here. They've been doing that in Orlando. I think they actually have 3 times that they do it per day in Orlando. But here we'll have 2. So 7 a.m. is your first opportunity. You do that one from home. Second one is at noon, but you must be in one of the 2 parks. And you have to, again, have valid media and valid park hopper for the day in order to make that reservation, trying to make it at noon. So there's going to be very limited spots. Not everyone will get in. Might be a little bit easier in the first couple of weeks just because so few people are being let into the parks at all. And the ride does have pretty good capacity. Now, once you're on the ride, you arrive. Instead of them letting you straight into the queue like they did in the past, and most of that queue was indoors, they're having everybody line up outside. And you do end up waiting quite a bit outside, even with your virtual queue, because they can't have people queuing at all indoors. And that ride is all indoor queue. Like 90% of the ride is a giant indoor queue. And granted, in that queue, there's a really kind of cool, and I'm not going to give anything seriously away, folks, so don't worry. But there's a giant pre-show with some characters and some droids that happens at one point, and there's a mini ride that happens on a shuttlecraft that happens, and then there's a sorting procedure that happens, and then there's another indoor pre-show kind of a thing with ghost projections, and then you finally get on the main ride, the trackless ride that everybody talks about. So we know that the trackless ride portion will absolutely happen, but a lot of that indoor queuing stuff will just be you walking. So they've created some abbreviated kind of show elements that happen that you can kind of get as you're walking by. And then you get to ride the ride, and instead of the whole experience taking you 22 minutes or however long it was taking, the whole thing may only take you 10 minutes. So they've really abbreviated the attraction so you don't spend so much time inside and you don't end up in a situation where you're locked into a room with strangers, at least not for now. So that's how they're handling Rise of the Resistance. I think it really is probably a little less stressful, especially being able to make that first boarding pass attempt at 7 a.m. Because if you don't get one and you know you can't make the next one until noon and you'd like to sleep in a little longer or have a coffee before going to the park, now you can. You don't have to be the first person through the gate. In fact, if you're trying to be the first person through the gate, you're going to be clogged up at the front of the park with a ton of other people. Everyone that's going for the day is going to be there at opening. And if you just wait a little bit, even a half an hour after opening, all those people will already be in the park and it'll be empty up front. And that's really a thing we learned when we were in Florida. We stopped going at opening. We started going 30 minutes after opening. And it made all the difference. And it made it so much less stressful for us. So try to get your Rise of the Resistance boarding pass at 7 a.m. If you get it and you have an early group, you have to be there early so you don't miss it. If you don't get it, then take your time and arrive and avoid the line at the parking structure, avoid the line at the front gate. And that's how they're handling Rise.
One thing to consider is if you can make your reservation at 7 and the park opens at 9 and you get the first boarding group, you still have 2 hours to board. So you could technically get there at 11 and still ride the attraction.
That's absolutely right. You have a full 2 hours from the time they call your boarding group to actually enter the queue for the attraction. So you have plenty of time. For many locals, they could drive to the park in those 2 hours, extra 2 hours. So you don't need to rush to the park, even if you did have the very first boarding group.
Other than getting the Rise of the Resistance boarding group through the app, what else should you be prepared to use the app for?
So I'm really glad we're talking about the app because it's going to be central to your experience when the park opens, because you'll use it for, of course, getting your Rise Pass. You'll make your restaurant reservations in the app. And if you haven't already made your restaurant reservations, as Matt well knows, because he's been like right on it with trying to get reservations for everything, it all filled up so quickly. And there's so few restaurants that even take reservations. There's 2 at Disneyland, there's 2 at California Adventure, and the ones at Disneyland are pretty small. So if you didn't get that restaurant reservation, you can put yourself into a virtual wait for that restaurant when you get to the park, and you do that in your app. So that's really cool. It's a great tip because not a lot of people know about it. So if you didn't get a reservation for Cafe Orleans, let's say, and you'd like to go there, when you get to the park, put your name on the waiting list, and they'll call you or let you know on your phone if you get approved for it. And we did that a couple of times during A Touch of Disney for Lamplight Lounge, and we got in both times. So it really is a helpful tip. The other thing is you'll be able to make some payments through your app. They do that at some of the restaurants where you pay on your phone and they just scan it, and that's how they know you've paid, which is pretty cool. And of course, ride wait times will also be done through the app. So that's the big tip, since there could be long lines in some places, but then no lines in other places, as I was explaining before. Just the way that crowds work with this limited capacity, everybody hoards to the same things at the same time, but then they do it and then they move on. So try to do the opposite of what everyone else is doing. If other people are doing Haunted Mansion and Snow White, then maybe you're doing Space Mountain and Indy. And when people are running to Space Mountain and Indy and Big Thunder, then maybe it's time for you to go and do Snow White and Haunted Mansion. And by afternoon, again, things are not going to be busy, but you will know instantly by looking at your app. So that's the good part of your app. The bad side is, one, you definitely want to make sure you've updated your app so that you have the latest version. If you don't have the latest version, it might not work properly. You might miss out on a boarding group or not be able to place your reservation, or it might start letting you place a reservation and then it never completes. So a lot of weirdness happens with the app, but it's almost always with people that either have an older phone or they have an out-of-date app. So update your app. Second thing, log into your account. Do it days before you arrive so that you know you can. What happens to a lot of people is they know they have a Disneyland account, and so they just head to the park and they bring their app out when they get to the park and realize they can't remember their login or their password. And then they end up wasting precious time in the park trying to recover their app, figure it all out. So get in there and play with it. A big tip with this app, when you open it and you're on this main screen, there's a lot of marketing going on. Like, they're telling you about all sorts of stuff, but it doesn't get you straight to what you need. There is a tiny itty bitty little button in the lower right hand corner with 3 lines. If you click on that, it takes you to another page that is super helpful with big giant buttons for all the main things you're going to want to do. For example, accessing virtual queues, wait times, etc. So that is your big tip on the app. And then finally, the app is an energy hog. So it will use up the battery on your phone, lickety split, and then you're going to end up with a dead phone, and then you're really up a creek. So bring a battery pack. If you have the fuel rods, Matt, have you ever used those fuel rods?
I haven't. I have something similar, but the fuel rods look really convenient.
They're really great. So there are a whole bunch of machines throughout the entire resort. All over. Each land has at least one machine. At Disneyland, same in California Adventure. Every hotel has at least one machine. So they're wonderful. The only problem with fuel rods is they don't charge your phone full. They give you about half charge. But for now, if you bought your fuel rods back when the machines first came out, you can get swaps for free. You do need to go onto the fuel rod site and go through that whole process of proving that you're an original legacy member of Fuel Rod, and they'll give you a code so you can do free swaps, because they have changed their business model and they now charge for battery swaps. But if you don't want to deal it, or you don't have fuel rods already and you just don't want to pay, then I suggest bring your own battery pack or 2. And I have a really gigantic battery pack that will give me like 12 charges. So there's no way I'm going to run out. I could charge it in full and I would be able to use it for a whole week. It's just amazing. And it's heavy, but it's worth it to me not to run out of charge in the middle of, a trip. So I definitely recommend that you come prepared. There's a related issue at Disneyland. They had some charging lockers for a while on Main Street. So if you ran out of battery charge, you could plug your phone into a charging locker and then come back and pick it up later. But the lockers are not going to be open at Disneyland when the parks return. So there will be some lockers out in the Esplanade that you can use if you just need to lock something up. But pack light. Don't plan on bringing things that you need to lock up because it's not going to be easy.
What are they doing in the Esplanade? What are those walls for?
I am trying to figure that out. I arrived. It's the first time we've seen them. There's 4 of them. There's 2 next to California Adventure. There's 2 next to Disneyland. And they're kind of surrounding those banners. So we don't know what's going on. Brand new. So when this video is over, I'm going to find out. We've got some pictures. We'll put it in the Monday update on Monday and tell you all what that is. So for sure, check back on my site. Of course, every Monday for our Disneyland update, there's always something interesting and aerial photos and exclusive news and our thoughts on things. So a little bit like we're doing right now, but in print form.
I finally got some comments. The first one is about IDs. Are they going to check IDs at the gate?
So we're going to know soon. Disneyland won't really comment. And of course, they're not going to say no, because then the floodgates would open and everybody would just show up. So Disney's official word on it is, be prepared to show your ID at the front gate. They may, and they have done that in the past. So if you bought the SoCal Salute tickets where you got 3 days for the price of 2, but it was only valid for people in certain zip codes, they were checking your IDs if you were over a certain age at the front gate. So they could very well do that. We also suspect they might be so busy and they're asking guests when they buy the tickets and make the reservations, are you local or not? And people are clicking, yes or no, and then they're allowed to buy their tickets. So they may just go based on what people say. We don't know yet. So we will know on opening day for sure. And we may even know before that. So we'll find out.
Another question I have is, do you think going after June 15th will mean the parks will return to full capacity?
No, we think it's going to be a very long time before the parks return to full capacity. They've been allowed to be at full capacity in Florida for months, or 6 months at least. Florida said, okay, we're done. No mask requirements, no social distancing requirements, no capacity limits. You do what you're going to do. And Disney continued to stay at reduced capacity, requiring reservations, etc. So we think Disney is going to play the safe game on this, and their whole brand revolves around people feeling safe and comfortable. And if people started showing up and it just was packed, and the mindset of people isn't quite in, being packed into things yet, then Disney doesn't want to suffer the consequences of that. So we do think they're going to very slowly increase capacity. It will come back. Florida is at probably over 50% capacity right now, and it feels very crowded because with distancing so forth on the attractions, lines for everything in Florida are long. It's hard to get food. The lines for the attractions can be hours long, and their hotels are packed, and you can't even get a reservation during spring break. It was just awful experience from what we're hearing. It's magical once you're in and riding rides and stuff, but it's super crowded. It felt like, pre-pandemic type crowding, but with all these restrictions. That will eventually happen here. So going early now is your best opportunity to avoid crowds, because as they ramp up capacity, once they're allowed, they will slowly do it. And as they do it, they will slowly add more cast members, which is the other piece of this puzzle and why they can't just overnight increase capacity. At reopening, they're planning on having about 10,000 cast members working the park. And that may sound like a lot to you, but before the parks closed, there were 31,000 employees here at the Disneyland Resort. Now, many of those were part-timers, but there were 31,000 people for them to choose from and asked to do overtime and whatever else they needed. And they're only calling back 10,000. And that means they can only really service about a third or less of the capacity that they had on normal days in the past. So keep that in mind. And it's been very, very hard for them to staff that 10,000, primarily because they're calling people back. They're not able to get a hold of everybody. If they've called twice and the employee doesn't answer, then they're separating those employees from the company. So essentially they're fired, and then they move on to the next person down the list. Well, they've exhausted many of their lists of the employees that were just furloughed, and they're soon going to be calling back people that were actually let go because of the pandemic, so people that were laid off. And somebody just got engaged. Hey, everybody. Yep, right in the middle there. Sorry, folks. You don't see that every day. We do. That's so sweet. Right on the compass in the center of the Esplanade. He got down on his knee and proposed to her. So anyway, back to our staffing dramas at Disneyland. And so they're having this hard time getting people to come back. But even if they get them to come back and schedule them for their training program and they come to the park on the opening day, they're finding that a huge number of the cast aren't showing up. So they're either calling out a day or two before training and saying, I'm just not ready to come back. Or they're saying, I already have a job somewhere else and it's better pay, so I'm just not going to come back to Disneyland. Or they just don't show up. And it takes Disney forever to react. So Disney is so slow. It takes them so long to put together these training classes, and it's a very limited number of people that can be in each class due to social distancing and et cetera. So they're having a really hard time, both here and in Florida. And Florida is trying to ramp up, and they just can't because they can't hire enough people. And they've now called through everybody that was either on furlough or laid off in Florida. And now they're going to do open casting calls for more staff members. So if you need a job and you live in the Florida area, Disney wants you. And at Disneyland here in California, they still have to work through all of the furloughed people before they go to the laid off people. But that is about to happen. So that's the news on that. Sorry, that's my very long response to that very easy question.
It's great information. It's great information. We keep getting views of the ticket booths, and I was wondering, let's say I have already purchased, of course, a one-day ticket or a one park per day ticket, and I want to upgrade to a park hopper. Are the ticket booths going to be open so I can do that?
So we don't expect that the ticket booths will be open. Of course, there will be some guest relations open, and guest relations should be able to assist you. Of course, you should check your app and make sure that park hoppers are still available, because they won't even be able to upgrade you from a single day ticket to a park hopper unless park hoppers are available for sale still. So you might find out that by the time you get to the park, the day that you're going is sold out. And we do think that because California caters to locals, that many of the days won't sell out until maybe the morning of or the day before. People just don't know sometimes, like you're waiting to see, is it going to be a good day? Is the weather right? And you decide in the morning, you wake up and you're like, it's a Disneyland day. It's beautiful. Is the park available? Yeah, it's available. And you pick up a ticket. So Disneyland tickets might sell out day of or just a few days in advance, or they may not sell out at all. In Florida, even though they were extremely limited capacity, when I was there in those early days, almost every day was available. Like you could buy tickets just about any day and schedule a reservation same day. But then as the months went on, it got busier and busier as people got more and more comfortable with the parks being open. And I think we're going to have a similar dynamic here. I think at first, once this initial first few weeks is over and everybody that wanted to be there on opening day is finally gone, I think the demand is going to drop way down. And it's going to take a little while to then come back up again slowly. And as more people get vaccinated and people figure out which hotels are open and what travel dates they have available with their kids and whether or not they feel safe getting on an airplane again, it's going to fill up here just like it has been in Florida. So I'm really using that as a model because Disneyland always felt more crowded to me than Walt Disney World because their parks are so much bigger and Disneyland is all those tight spaces and everything. But I think at opening it's going to be the reverse for quite a while, and Disney World's going to continue to be the busier one, and Disneyland will take a while to recover as they slowly add cast members back and capacity and rides. And it's a lot of money. I'm talking to so many people and they're saying, gosh, I can't, now that the passes are gone, I'm not sure I can really afford to go to Disneyland. One, you can. If you were paying $1,500 a year for an annual pass before for that top level pass, and tickets on the The low season days can be as low as $104, although right now there's not a single $104 day on the calendar. But you can still buy, almost 10, more than 10 tickets, 15 tickets for that cost if you're willing to go on uncrowded low season days. So, you can still go often, almost once a month. So people could really afford it. But it's going to take a while for a lot of people to get that mindset. And the reason the parks were so crowded before is because people that paid a lot of money for passes had to justify that by going often. And every time that Disney would raise the cost of annual passes, it didn't make the parks less crowded. It made the parks more crowded. And it made them more crowded because you had to go more often to justify the expense of the pass. So it's psychology. And it's another reason why they had to get rid of passes, at least in the near term, because there's just no capacity in the parks. So it's a weird dynamic that we will keep a very close eye on, and we will share, is the park filling up? How is the capacity? How are the lines, et cetera? So people can help decide, is it worth paying the $154 for a single day, one park ticket if the park is going to have half the rides closed and half the restaurants and the lines are going to be long? Or is it the opposite? Is it a breeze? And even though that stuff is closed, it's so wonderful to be there that it's worth paying the money. So we will let you know for sure.
So, what would you say the top 3 things that you recommend or that you must do? Let's just go 3 things that you must be aware of before you go to the parks, just to
So
kind of wrap things up.
I know that a lot of people listening right now think they've got it wired because they're huge fans. Uh, but you must make sure that you actually have a valid park reservation. Disney is more worried about that than just about anything else right now because they continue to receive so many calls from people asking questions about things. And when they ask about reservations, people say, yeah, I have a ticket. Or I bought a ticket to go on such and such a day. And when Disney says, yeah, but do you also have, in addition to your ticket, the reservation? So many people are saying, what's a reservation? Because Disney's never done it before. So it's new. And whenever there's something new, there's a group of people that are going to miss it. So I think that's the number one pitfall. Can you imagine, driving down from San Francisco with your family, having bought expensive tickets to go to the opening, and then finding out that you didn't make a reservation, that you didn't even know reservations were required? So I think that's the main thing that and that you share with your friends. Make sure that if your friend says, oh, I'm going to Disneyland, that you always ask, oh, what day did you get a reservation for? Did you actually get a reservation or just a ticket? Because I think you have to go that extra step. So that's my first big thing. Second thing would be, along the lines of what I was talking about, going against the flow with dining. I think dining is going to disappoint people more than anything else. I think dining is going to be the thing that trips a lot of families up, because if you wait until you're hungry before you figure out what you want to eat, you're going to go hungry. And the reason for that is there's so many restaurants closed that lines are going to get really, really long, and they want you to order all your food through mobile order. And mobile order at Disney isn't easy like it is through Grubhub and other places where you just pick out what you want and the time that you're going to pick it up, and then you pay, and then you just go pick it up at that time. Disney put this middle step in where you have to tell them that you're here. So I'm going to give you an example of what happened to me at a Touch of Disney, as I couldn't go to Touch of Disney until a little bit after 2 o'clock. And when I got there, the earliest time that I could get anything on mobile order was an hour later. So I'm already hungry by the time I get there. I hadn't been eating. And now I have to wait an hour for the first time available. And I put my food in that I wanted and I paid. And then as soon as that window opened up, I went there and I clicked, I'm here. And from the time I clicked, I'm here, until I got the message back that my food was ready, was 45 minutes. So I waited an hour, and then I waited 45 minutes, and then I had to get in line to pick up my food, and that's another 15 minutes. So it was 2 full hours to get my food on a hungry stomach. And you can imagine, I get hangry, and I think a lot of people do. So in order to avoid that, here's my suggestion. As soon as you get to the park, figure out where you want lunch and order your food. So you can pick a time for whenever you think you want to eat, and order it as soon as you get to the park, so that you don't end up having to take if you wait until noon to eat, the closest, time available might be 5 p.m. But if you get to the park and you pick noon, it'll be available. And then the one thing to know is that, of course, then you click I'm here and it could still take you a while. So maybe bring a little snack or something in your backpack so that you know that you have a little something to nosh on. Even the ODV carts, the outdoor vending carts, could be very busy. And it might be difficult to pick up things like a bottle of water or a popcorn because at opening, they're not going to have a lot of stuff open and they're going to kind of use those early people as guinea pigs to determine how much more stuff that they need to open. So that's the scoop on those two things. Third thing, I would say Rise of the Resistance. Um, it's trial and error and it's lottery. You're going to go on at 7 a.m. and please go on to my shot and we have a guide saying everything you need to know about obtaining a boarding pass for Rise of the Resistance. It's a process, folks. There, so many people wait until the time to make the reservation and then don't know where to go to make that boarding pass reservation. So please go and follow the steps. You go into the app, you click the 3 bars I was telling you about, you click on virtual queues, and then you'll see the button for boarding pass. It won't light up until 7 o'clock. But depending on the Wi-Fi in your home and how fast your internet speed is, it could take a tenth of a second longer than other people. And those boarding passes go fast. Like, Matt, you're the king of like knowing how to judge these things. What are your suggestions on, people know it's 7 a.m. that the first passes become available. What can they do to help get just a minute edge, which is really what they would need to get the ticket?
Try to avoid crowds. Like, for example, if you're in the park, try to go to an area where there are not a lot of people. Granted, it won't make that much of a difference because the towers aren't that close to each other. But I know that people who avoided the crowds seemed to have better luck than people who were in the middle of crowds trying to fight for a signal. And that's from social media post from a year ago. But that was consistent. It was repeated over and over again that if you stayed away from the crowds, you had a better chance.
So the morning, it won't matter. At 7 a.m., it really is about, do you have adequate internet at home? But what about, so then for the noon opportunity, that's when you have to be in one of the 2 parks. Just get away from where everybody else is and make sure you have good signal strength. Here's the question I have for you. So am I better off connected to the park Wi-Fi or should I be connected to the cellular on my phone for my data?
I have never had good luck with Disneyland Wi-Fi. Disney World Wi-Fi is decent, but Disneyland Wi-Fi has been inconsistent. So I would go with your own cellular.
I think that's probably what I would do as well. I don't even connect to Disney Wi-Fi for the videos that we do. And even though I have some dead spots on my T-Mobile here at the resort, it's so much better. It can show me that I have full bars of connection to Disneyland Wi-Fi, and I can still end up with video shredding and dropping audio, etc. So even though I know that this video hasn't been perfect on my Wi-Fi on my cellular, it's better than if I was on park Wi-Fi. So I think that would probably be true also then of trying to get a boarding pass, because it really does come down to like a second can make all the difference in the world, right?
Right, because they go so quickly.
Yeah. It's just like trying to get a ticket to be in one of their stupid merchandise events, or you're trying to get tickets for opening day. Like everything crashes, and like just expect Disney's technology side to have troubles. They're just not going to have enough capacity at first. Things are going to be bad. Just expect it. And if you do, then you won't be as upset if you don't get it. And the same thing on Rise. I've told so many people, if you get it, awesome. Enjoy it. If you didn't, don't worry about it. It's an altered experience. It's not the full Rise of the Resistance experience. There's so much stuff that is going to be, reduced or removed at first in that ride that, it's not the ultimate way to see it. So if you don't get it, tell the kids, you know what, this is better. We'll come back when it's at full, it's full operations and we'll ride it then. And they'll understand that. You know, I want you to see this in its best light. And if you did get it, also set the correct expectations and say, we're going to ride this and enjoy it, but we're going to come back and ride it again sometime when it's in full operation. Um, and as we get ready to wrap up this video, I'm just going to come back here to the Disneyland gate. We're going to look into Main Street USA, see if anything happens here. And is there anything else that you had for me, Matt?
No, but I was just thinking that in 3 days, well, really 2.5 because it's the 24th. So in 2.5 days, uh, cast members and their guests will be walking through those turnstiles.
Yes, I'll be one of those guests. I'll be there on the first preview day on the 27th, and we will have a live stream. And in fact, one of the reasons why we did this video today is so we could test out our new video streaming platform here. And so I think it went pretty well. It's streaming to multiple social media sites at the same time. So wherever you find us, you'll be able to get the live stream. And let us know in the comments if you had any troubles with this live stream so that we can address them before the 27th. So I'll be there at opening. As soon as I'm in, I'm going to run to either Haunted Mansion or Snow White so I can try to get you guys coverage. Andy Castro will also be with me, and he's also going to he'll go to the other attraction. We'll try to get something up on the website right away, and then I'll do a live stream, and I'll walk through the entire park, and then I'll end the stream and go get my photos and write some more content from the site. And then at 1, I'll switch over to California Adventure, and then we'll do another live stream. So lots of fun stuff for you guys on the 27th. I'll be back again on the 28th. So we'll do some more fun stuff on the 28th. Again, a preview day. Then almost our whole team is coming on the 30th for the official opening day. I know you'll be here, Matt, and we have at least 12, 13 people that are coming for opening day. So we have so much coming in this upcoming week, and it's exciting. It's been such a long year and so hard for so many people. But this is truly something for us to all look forward to, and it's a little step of normalcy coming back into our lives. And although it will be different, and there will be masks, and there will be social distancing, and things will be closed, and there will be no parades, it's still going to be Disneyland. And we're going to be able to experience a little bit of that magic again. And I can't wait to be back in these parks. And I just saw somebody in our comments say, and be prepared to be extra nice to cast members. Let me tell you all, folks, how true that is. I know so many cast members and people that started off, you know, on our forums on Mice Chat when they were little kids, and all they ever wanted was to be an Imagineer or to be a Disneyland employee. And they've grown up now, and now many of them are working in the parks. And this has been the hardest couple of weeks for many of them because they're getting called back to work, but many of their friends didn't, and are still suffering and having trouble making rent and getting their kids fed. And the life of a CM is not easy. They do not get paid much. And they're getting called back, not necessarily to their previous attraction or shop or restaurant or even job, but because they had seniority, they got called back, and they're having to learn new things. And they're coming back to places that have been altered significantly. If you're in a restaurant that has a tight kitchen, they may not have been able to staff all the positions they had in the past for social distancing reasons. So they're having to do double duty. So the lines will be long, and they'll be working hard. And if somebody calls out sick, the park is not really staffed for that. They'll have to work overtime, and it'll be mandatory. So the cast are really going to be put into a very, very difficult position. And one guest going off on them or shouting and yelling at them that they waited 2 hours for food or whatever is really going to impact that person's day. And once they've turned negative, once you've turned them negative, it's very hard for them to dig out of. And now they can't provide a magical experience to the next person or the person after that. And it all goes downhill from there. So I think we all go just expecting that, yeah, is it going to be a disaster? Probably. You know what happened at Disneyland on opening day in 1955? They had to decide between whether or not they wanted flushing toilets or water fountains because they weren't ready to open yet. And Walt said, well, got to have toilets. So they had no water fountains. And they had just laid the asphalt on Main Street, and ladies' heels were sinking into the asphalt. And a lot of the rides weren't functional, and the ones that weren't operating properly. And by the end of the first day, there was only one working Autopia car. So that was Disneyland on opening day, and yet people still look back on it as one of the most magical experiences of their lives to be in this unique magic place created by Walt Disney. And I'm looking at the entry tunnel right now, and the sign reads, here you leave today and enter the world of yesterday, tomorrow, and fantasy. And you're the one that makes that. It's all in your head. So you go knowing that things may not be perfect, but you're entering a world of fantasy and you're not at home sitting on your couch. And be happy for that. And know that as the days go on, it will get better here. And we will write about it and tell people what is good and what is bad so the park can fix it. And also that you know what to avoid. So there will be things that'll be next to perfect, and there will be things that, you know what, it's better to avoid right now, and we'll let you know that. But go and be the best guest you can be and help lift those cast members up, because I know some of them are already on the verge of quitting and the park hasn't even opened yet. They're just so stressed out with all the cleaning that they have to do and the work that they have to learn and the hours they're being expected to work. So folks, it's really up to all of us to help keep this magic going. And it's expensive, and you know, it shouldn't be the guest's job, but it is going to be, because we're all part of the experience of, you know, making another person's day, whether that person is a worker or another guest. So thank you so much for that comment. I appreciate seeing what you all have been saying in the comments here. It's hard for me to read the comments and, you know, do the video at the same time. But Matt, I appreciate you being on the line with me, because you asked such great questions that really help, you know, people know what to expect here in the parks. And I think that the key is just, you know, maybe go a little bit late, half an hour late, and just enjoy your day, easy breezy. Watch the app to see, you know, what has the shortest lines. Go do those things and just go with the flow. And I think if you can do that, aside from the stress of getting a Rise of the Resistance pass, I think you'll have a wonderful time. And that's my honest opinion on how opening day will go and what will make the best experience.
I'm looking forward to it no matter what.
Me too. And I can't wait to see you and so many of the Mice Chat staff. And we've all been vaccinated, so we can actually, you know, hug each other again and see each other. And I'm so glad that, you know, we've all been so blessed and lucky to be able to get vaccinations, and that we're all still alive and well. And it's truly our blessing. It's a year where we all learned a lot about each other and life and what's important and what's not. And Matt, you're one of the people that's very important to me, so I appreciate you being here on the call today, and I can't wait to see you.
I cannot wait to see you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and Mike Kendrick, I just saw you saying that you can't wait to hug us, and I feel the same, man. Looking forward to seeing you and your pictures in the Monday update. So thanks, everybody. We'll be back again with you real soon. Be sure to follow us on Monday for the Disneyland update, and then on Tuesday for a long live stream from Disneyland, USA. See you real soon. Bye, everybody.